So in the Paris Agreement in 2015, countries committed to reporting on the actions that they had taken in relation to climate change. What they had done for mitigation, meaning reducing the amount of greenhouse gas that they emitted, adaptation measures, and support provided or received in any of these endeavors. And the whole system is called the Enhanced Transparency Framework, as was mentioned earlier by our speakers. And it also produced a process for reviewing these national reports. And then Article 14 created a process for periodically taking stock of the implementation efforts taken and tracking overall progress towards achieving the Paris goals of keeping global warming to between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius. So, and that process is called the Global Stocktake, and that's what they termed it, and they put the quotes right there in the Paris Agreement. So that's it. And its purpose, it wasn't so much to decide who's good and who's bad in terms of moving forward. The whole thing has a facilitative approach. So it's supposed to inform parties as they update and enhance their national commitments in accordance with the Paris Agreement, as well as enhancing international cooperation in general. So both the national and the international. So it was to inform that. And in the Paris Agreement, the parties committed to having this process every 5 years, the Global Stocktake, but the first one was going to start 8 years after it, which is 2023, and that's where we are today. So as Tracy mentioned, the Global Stocktake has 3 major components. The first one is information gathering. Information collection and preparation is the official, and it includes all the data gathered through the Enhanced Transparency Framework, like everything that countries have submitted that they have done, as well as scientific reports, IPCC reports, many other sources. Then there is the technical assessment phase, and a key aspect of that, which is looking at all the data and assessing how far we've come. And a key part of that was the technical dialogues. And this is the procedure that Tracy Tolman had a key role in organizing. And it is the thing that the Better Climate Governance Project, Catherine and I, have focused on. It has taken place for the last 3 years. The last 3 subsidiary body meetings, meaning last June, 2022, in Sharm el-Sheikh, at the COP27 in November. And then again, the third one took place in June in Bonn this year, 2023. And the assessment is to, as the name suggests, look at all the data and decide where we are. And that's why it's very exciting that on September 8th, there will be the synthesis report, the results of all that listening done by the co-facilitators. And also next Tuesday, as Tracy mentioned, there will be an online event. So to access that, you could just Google UNFC Global Stocktake Technical Dialogues, and you'll probably find the link there to the open meeting next Tuesday. Then that's the second phase, the technical assessment. And then the third phase is what's called the consideration of outputs. And that is what is going to be happening at COP28 this year in December in Dubai. And this is the political phase. This is when people have already technically assessed, and then that information goes forward. And it's expected to include with a decision or a declaration of some kind. The Better Climate Governance Project has been observing, as I mentioned, the three phases of the technical dialogues, and has noted some process innovations that the chairs, Harold Winkler from South Africa and Farhan Akbar from the United States, they really, again, as Tracy mentioned, have really done some innovations that have never before happened in a UNFCCC event. Catherine and I submitted our findings on those innovations through the technical dialogue submissions portal. So you can see the full text of the very brief points I'm going to make now there. And we're in the process of developing our final findings, and that will be, again, shared in a policy brief and probably academic paper through our website. You can access that. So some of the innovations that we observed that we are finding, according to those we are interviewing who are participants, really enhance the strength of this aspect of the global stocktake. There are four main things. They had a really inclusive approach. Parties, non-party stakeholders in several of the formats that they used were able to speak equally and engage with each other, whereas quite often it is just parties and observers are either not able to speak at all, or if they're able to speak, by the time they get to speak, it's at the very end, the room is half empty, and it's not as meaningful as it was in this session, where in some of the sessions they alternated between parties and non-party stakeholders. They really took seriously that mandate that they had from the CMA decision to include non-party stakeholders in the process. So that was the first one. The second, they used innovative processes, things that hadn't been used before to this extent in a mandated event. And one of them was the World Cafe process, where there were small group discussions. There were notes taken, but no video done, and people were huddled around tables rather than sitting very formally in huge rooms behind their name placards. So very different feeling, and possibility for back and forth exchanges. When people didn't understand each other, they could say, "Could you say that in a different way?" Or but how does that fit with this? Like, that kind of conversation isn't present in negotiation rooms, and so people can continue with misunderstandings of what others have said. So that was a process that has been not uniformly welcomed by the parties, but most parties are flagging that as a big step forward in how these negotiations take place. Secondly, there was use of skilled external facilitators. Traditionally, the people who facilitate meetings are just other party members who've been designated or chosen by the parties to moderate. And there's some problems with that, because people have varying levels of skill, and they also have naturally a vested interest, although, I mean, the facilitators are really usually, the party facilitators are usually pretty skilled at not, at least as they're in the room facilitating, showing any kind of bias, but they can't help but have that, given that they come from parties that have a stake in how a conversation goes. Whereas at this event, for small groups, they engaged external facilitators who were very skilled for the most part, and subject matter experts who could really help move the conversation along, and didn't have that ongoing relationship with colleagues. So it's harder to cut somebody off when you've got an ongoing relationship with them, rather than with a facilitator who just needs to get the job done and will actually move people along. And finally, there was a real push towards informality. There was calling on people by their first names rather than by country in many of the formats that they used. And this was also a shift. And many people felt it again moved things towards a more effective conversation than if they were having that distance created by the official title and the being called on by the name of your country. So as I say, our interviews with participants, party and non-party, are showing that these innovations have been mostly well received and believed to have increased the effectiveness of the whole process. So with that, I'll end my introductory remarks. When we enter the small group, our focus questions will be, what do you see as the meaning of accountability within UNFCCC processes? Do you think it's working? What worked more or less well in this first global stocktake, as far as we end the second phase of it? And what are the lessons for future stocktakes? So that will be the focus of our conversation. And now I'm going to pass to Catherine, who's going to provide a brief introduction to Stream B. Thank you.